For Global Business Update, Rotus Odiri joins us now.
Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Ayo, and good morning, Rufai. Yeah, so on the global front, to start with China, factory gate inflation was released today, along with consumer price inflation. And there's a deflationary atmosphere in China right now. So you saw producer price inflation, which is what producers face as far as the costs of putting their goods together, cooling to about 1.3%. I think that's what was estimated by analysts. Also, producer inflation, that's consumer price inflation, your CPI, your normal inflation we talk about, that was 1.6 in November. It was about 2.1, 2.2% in October. And this is mostly due to the zero COVID policy that has depressed demand in China. Now, remember, the reopening that was announced happened this month of December. So we'll see whether, Disney Shanghai opening up and, other activities, as you see people walking around and so on. We'll see whether this increasing activity increases aggregate demand, which then will probably push up prices. But this gives the People's Bank of China more room for a lot more easing and a lot more assistance. In fact, as we speak, property prices or property stocks for developers in China, they've been climbing due to the People's Bank of China announcing more support. But for now, as far as November is concerned, a bit of a deflationary atmosphere with China because of suppressed demand due to the zero COVID protocols. Still in China, more Middle East, Xi Jinping, as you know, arrived in Riyadh on Wednesday. He was given a lavish welcome by Prince Mohammed bin Salman, as opposed to the cool reception that Joe Biden got when he came to Saudi Arabia. They've signed a raft of deals, reportedly totaling about $30 billion. According to the Saudi Statistics Agency, trade between Saudi Arabia and China totaled about $85 billion in 2021. As of the third quarter of this year, 2022, it came out about $28 billion. So they are working together to increase relations. And listen, when a head of state travels, and I'm subbing somebody, when you announce to your people that you're getting on a plane and flying to another country, come back with deals. He hasn't even come back yet. He's already signed $30 billion worth of deals. And this is in ICT, construction. You know about the Belt and Road Initiative that China is doing. I mean, there's a number of deals, technology, so on and so. Look at it. He even got a fighter jet reception when he got there. So they really rolled out the red carpet for Xi Jinping when he arrived there. As you know, the West is very, very worried about China's influence around the world. I think the Saudis even signed a deal with Huawei. And as you know, Huawei is facing restrictions from the United States, which doesn't allow it to, get, parts there. So China basically increasing its, and I think Xi Jinping is going to be meeting with other Arab leaders today or tomorrow, leader of Tunisia and other nations there as well. We move to the UK, Japan, and Italy. They are collaborating on building new fighter jets. Rishi Sunak announced that these jets, he said, quote, they're working on this in order to counter nations that wish to harm us. I believe it will be ready by about 2035. So it's a collaboration between the three nations. In the United States, the Federal Trade Commission has sued to block Microsoft's $68 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard, which was announced, way back in January. They've tangled before. Remember Windows and the whole matter with Windows software being too dominant. This was back in, 1998 or so, way back then. So the Federal Trade Commission, I think their panel voted 3-1 to move this administrative complaint to a judge. That is then going to push this forward. Sony has been behind the opposition to this deal. As you know, Sony's got the PlayStation, Microsoft has the Xbox. They're big competitors with each other. You've got Nintendo, you've got other players in the video game space. And Sony has been saying that if you push this forward, this is going to lead to Microsoft getting a almost monopoly-like position in the video game industry. Microsoft, of course, is pushing back against that. But the FTC is stepping in place for that to move forward. So again, this deal was supposed to close by around June 2023. This is going to delay that. For the African front, you've got the Lagos state government looking to usurp the powers of the Electricity Regulatory Commission in Lagos with respect to being able to provide power. Now, Whether or not they think they're going to push this forward with their House of Assembly to get to push that forward in order to allow Lagos to have more powers over, I guess, distribution and transmission. But look, we've got an act in place as far as the Constitution is concerned, and the electricity
Power Act,
exactly,
05 Power Act.
which does not allow a state to usurp the powers of the regulator. There are some, I believe, with respect to maybe generation, there's some areas where the state can work with NERC. I think Akwa Ibom, for instance, has a generation center in its state. But I understand the National Assembly is looking at trying to give states more power. That's who has the power here to pass a law that would allow for this to happen. So, this is a very, very interesting development with respect to whether or not, we push forward to states being more independent. And if you listen to the language of the major presidential candidates as we had in our most recent town hall, well, that was on education and human capital development. But if you look at their manifestos, they do want to have this more desegregated when it comes to transmission especially. And then finally, the DSS had a meeting in Abuja with NNPC and some other downstream players after they came out, they're issuing a 48-hour deadline on fuel scarcity to end, saying that they're going to be targeting saboteurs and so on and so forth. Interesting that the DSS is getting involed in that.
Chair of
that's what we're seeing. Yeah.
Okay, so, a couple of things. Let me start from local and go forward and take one story, and get it out. I'm excited about what Lagos State government is doing. And I'm excited that a state government is pushing us regards getting into the power sector. I've always advocated for this. And when you look at it, I feel that the National Assembly should be able to look at that Power Act of 05 again, repeal some things in it, because the federal government has shown that he cannot effectively do the job. Mm-hmm. So why can't the state get into it? And when you dial back historically, it has always been like that. Local investors come in, put it up, set up the power system, have their consumers send power to them. I want you to Google up a company. It's called NESCO.
Okay.
NESCO is the oldest existing power company today in Nigeria. Started in the 1920s. Tell you what, still runs and still provide power. NESCO was set up then to be able to provide power to those in the tin industry and some other industrials in Jos in the early colonial days. And it still runs till date, has its customers. In some local government, they get that power because of the work of NESCO.
Yeah.
If you open up the system like Lagos State is trying to do now, the state will be the electricity regulator. More independent producers can come. Mm-hmm. I can come, you can come, we can do 2 to 3 megawatts. I have my bunch of customers, the state regulates us. We get power to the people in the state. So it's as simple as that. I know the National Assembly is trying to, remove the leash of some sort. Akwa Ibom State has got it. I think even Delta has got it too, because the airport, I hear, has that level of power. Then you can feed the power to your consumer. In fact, it's already happening in Lagos. There's some guy, I think, out of Lekki that's got a little power station that feeds into customers. A bunch of my friends came together to buy a place called The Good Bitch, and they get power from that guy. So if you can have a state regulator and independent people can provide, then they should be able to settle their power things. So I'm really in consonance with this. I'm happy about this.
But can you get this? What the NERC is trying to do is make this uniform across the country. How many other states have the capacity of Lagos to be able to replicate that?
So the thing is, for states that don't have the capacity, the federal governments can still pretty much handle them till they build capacity.
Subsidies.
Subsidies and all of that. Still pretty much handle, or they be on the national grid. Yeah. Because when you look at the way power is being done, there's still a national grid in the UK that's being run by a central person, to be able to distribute the power that goes on. But the states that can pay for it should be able to do it. Then as those states catch up, then they can come on the line. Because it has to be based on power needs, because when you look at it, industrial production should come first. Secondly, let me talk about Microsoft.
Yeah.
This is happening because obviously, there are anti-competition laws. Anti-competition laws date back to the 1800s. There's something called the Sherman Act, as regards anti-competition, that some people can be more powerful than the other people. Microsoft has got Xbox. They've been challenging, but anyway, not as potent as Sony with its PlayStation and Nintendo and the likes. They've been challenging in that space. And when they get Activision Blizzard in, with the market dominance in the deal that's worth over $60 billion, is definitely going to dwarf others. I mean, I think Activision has got Call of Duty.
That's right.
Which is one of the most played games. I mean, I play Call of Duty.
For 2022,
I mean, and for everybody that thinks I'm just a TV buff, I still play PS4 sometimes. I mean, so, you know, and if you get that in, then definitely it's going to disrupt the market. But let's see how it's going to pass through, you know, with the anti-competition market, because, and I deliberately say that, because there are some deals that you expect that anti-competition should call down,
right,
that they have allowed to pass. Take, for instance, for the life of me, Facebook buying Instagram was one deal, you know, that I felt was going to, or Facebook buying WhatsApp was another deal that I felt was going to give too much dominance, but it sailed through one way or the other. So I think if Microsoft makes a great case, then they'll be able to sail through.
All right.
Okay, Ayo, do you want to go first?
Yes, let me go. I mean, just jumping on what Rufai said with regards to NERC and state regulation. And like you mentioned, Lagos State is the commercial capital of Nigeria. And we know and understand the importance of power for businesses, especially small businesses, of which Lagos State has, you know, a huge chunk from across the nation. It's ambitious. There's a process. It's going to be a long process. I'm very doubtful, despite what, you know, as Rufai has highlighted, the benefits to states if NERC is state regulated, if the federal government will relinquish power. They have demonstrated over time that they're not able to, you know, manage or handle regulation of electricity across Nigeria, and so it would behoove for in terms of competition across states to take ownership of that. We have seen this play out in smaller, you know, in small estates, communities across the country where they have managed electricity to a certain extent, and it has worked. Perhaps it's time to begin to pursue this, and the big argument for this, of course, would be the economic benefit. And then on to China very quickly. I'll just say that China and Saudi Arabia, that part of the Vision 2030 of Saudi Arabia, they're looking to partner with China to diversify from fossil fuel. I think this is very instructive for us here in Nigeria. Like you mentioned, when we have meetings and we travel abroad and we come back with deals, these are the kind of deals that we want to see. It's time for us to begin to think of our future and diversifying.
Okay, a number of issues, and I think that they are as follows. Let's start from Lagos State. The Constitution of Nigeria places the generation, transmission, distribution of electricity under the exclusive list. And that has been a major issue, with state governors at a point saying that that is unacceptable. There are aspects of that Constitution that recognizes the right of state governments to make regulations with regard to electricity. But the truth of the matter is that electricity being placed on the exclusive list limits the influence of state governments in Nigeria. And hence you have this national grid. So even if you have a power plant, then of course you have to put it on the national grid. A national grid that is continually failing to the disadvantage of the people in the states. The second point to be made in this regard is that the federal government, having failed in many regards, education, power,
you name it,
every sector, the economy, you'll find state governments now saying, look, if we want to restructure this country, we have to look at the details. Not restructuring in terms of saying one part goes away, another part remains, but looking at the details. And electricity was identified as one of those details. Number 3, earlier this year, when there was constitutional amendment in March, certain elements were identified, about 14 of them, which would require the concurrence of the state houses of assembly. 2/3 of them, as the Constitution stipulates, 2/3 of 36 is 24. But have you had anybody working on any of those issues, including electricity, fiscal autonomy for state judiciary, fiscal autonomy for the legislature? Everybody is obsessed with the 2023 election. And the state governors do not even agree with some of those accepted pieces from the National Assembly. So what we're dealing with, the response from the Lagos State government, has to do with restructuring, has to do with devolution of powers, has to do with federalism. So what is the Lagos State government now saying? They have in place a Lagos electricity law of 2018. The commissioner in charge of energy in Lagos State is now saying they want to send that to the House of Assembly so that Lagos State can take control of the regulation of electricity in Lagos State. Okay, if we consume electricity here, two major discos in Lagos. We have Ikeja, Abi, disco. We have, which one is that? Echo. We have Echo Disco. Okay, so Lagos State is saying we should regulate them, not the National Electricity Regulation Commission that came out of the electricity sector reform process that started during the Obasanjo period. The question I ask is, yes, while we understand the point about federalism, about restructuring, about the states being given more powers, have they consulted the discos? What is the position of Eco Disco and Ikeja Disco in this matter? Have they been carried along? Are they stakeholders? How is their interest served? And we, the people, the consumers of electricity, are they going to involve us in this proposal to seize control of regulation? That's that about that. The second one about Microsoft and the Federal Trade Commission, that's straightforward. Antitrust, this is a big thing in trade law. It's to prevent monopoly. And apart from, this issue with Microsoft, the whole idea is to promote competition. The most recent example was when a federal judge in the United States ruled that is a Random House cannot acquire, Random House Penguin cannot acquire Simon & Schuster because if they were allowed to do so, then there will be dominance and then you will constrict competition. You will create an unnecessary monopoly. The lesson here is that in Nigeria, we have a lot of monopolies. Even the state in Nigeria encourages monopoly to the disadvantage of the public and other stakeholders within that space. That's a big issue there. I saw China. Yes, 1.6% inflation rate in terms of increase. But the bigger issue in China, it seems to me, is the fact that the lessening of COVID controls, right? The expectation, as I pointed out yesterday, is that it will accelerate growth. But it may not do so immediately because we're being told that infection rate will go up, and if infection rate goes up, it will have a corresponding impact on the rate of economic growth, and no impact may be seen until maybe the second quarter of next year. But the decision that has been taken by the State Council in China is purely an economic one. And the underlying factor there is that the founder of Foxconn, Mr. Gu, was said to have written a letter and to have influenced. You see these business people, they try to influence government everywhere. Although the Chinese government has not admitted that they were put under pressure. But that's the reality in China.
That's all.
Wait, so has anyone noticed doctor's glasses? Are those new? Doctor's glasses. Those are some fancy looking glasses, doctor.
No, some people say it makes me look like a welder. So I may not use it again.
Oh my God, who said that?
Those glasses look expensive. Those glasses look expensive. All right, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.